Thank you, Senator Brown. I want to thank you and the chairman for having this hearing. Thank all of you for your testimony. I am a big supporter of moving forward as quickly as possible with this reauthorization. I also serve on the Environment Committee, and we have already passed unanimously the highway portion of this bill. So I'm hopeful that this committee will achieve the same consensus in moving forward with the transit portion. Of course, funding is the key missing element. We've got to come up with a increased, more robust funding source. Many of us have put forward proposals over the years, and my challenge to people who don't support one of those is come up with another funding proposal, and let's get bipartisan support for it so we can move forward. We've been deadlocked on something that has broad support throughout the country for a long time because of that. Mr. Skatelis, thank you for mentioning WMATA, and we have seen a 4% increase in ridership. I think that's a result of many of the improvements that were made. We took a little bit of a timeout. It created some inconvenience, but as a result, we've seen an uptick. That is, of course, the nation's metro. 40% of the federal workforce travels in peak hours on our metro system. We are grateful for the federal contribution to that system, $150 million a year. The surrounding states have been meeting their shares. In fact, they've changed their laws in order to comply. I was pleased to see the Trump administration include funding this year for that. But I would just say to the Mr. Chairman and the committee, Senator Warner and I and Senator Cardin and Senator Kaine have introduced legislation to extend the authorization for WMATA and both increase the investment, but also increase some of the, provide some reforms and provide a little more oversight in the process. So I hope we can fold that into this legislation. Mr. Willis, thank you for mentioning the transit workforce safety bill that we've introduced. I hope we can also fold that into this reauthorization effort. And I just want to focus for a minute, Mr. Bogren, you gave a great sort of story about the woman in West Virginia who was able to finally get out and about because of public transit. One of the challenges we continue to face is the first mile, last mile issue, right? We have these great transportation networks, but we also know that when we find ways to get people from that first mile from their home to transit, we can dramatically increase it and improve quality of life for people. So as we look at this reauthorization, I'm interested in your perspectives on how we can, as a federal government, more incentivize first and last mile links. In Maryland, we have a pilot project going on in Montgomery County. The county's got this kind of Uber-like system where they're beginning to take people back and forth for those components of the trip. But I'm interested in your thoughts on how we can expand those efforts.
I live in Germantown, and I take a ride-on bus to the metro every morning, so I'm very familiar with the first and last mile trips in Montgomery County. You know, one of the ways that a lot of smaller communities and smaller systems are looking at is using volunteer drivers and providing incentives to have folks that are recently retired or looking to kind of give back into the community, particularly, you know, I'm thinking Western Maryland, the Eastern Shore, these areas. This is a real resource that we need to tap into, and that's one way to do it. And then the other thing is really to focus first mile, last mile around outcomes. What's the purpose? Are we feeding fixed routes, which is a good outcome? But there are some times when we're forcing folks into fixed routes that are just not the way they want to travel. And so I think along with kind of the traditional getting someone into the system are short trips that are healthcare related, human and social service related, that we can do a much better job of. Technology is a big piece. And all these things, it's asking the customers what they want.
Appreciate it.